Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Meg DeForest, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Meg, how's it going today?
It's really good. I'm having a good time joining you guys.
Good. Meg, of course, you're helping fill in today for Caroline, who's not able to be with us. But Meg, you, of course, we've talked about you on the past. You've actually been on the podcast before. You are a part of, as Caroline always loves to say, the Overdue Finds family. You were last on our episode where we chatted all about adulting, and I think that was last summer. So happy to have you joining me today.
No, I'm glad to be back, and I love being part of the family. It's a great family to be in.
That's right. Meg, of course, for those who don't know, Meg actually handles a lot of the editing on Overdue Finds. You edit quite a few of our episodes here over the last little while, so you do an amazing job.
Oh, thanks. It's a lot of fun. I get the sneak peeks of what's happening next in the Overdue Finds world, so it's always good to hear.
That's right. And actually, for listeners joining us today, of course, you're hearing Meg's voice, but you may have recently seen her on quite a few of our YouTube videos. So, Meg, you've recently done digital detox class, which is very important these days, and most recently, history of board games, which was amazing. Anything else you've been working on video-wise?
Yeah, I've got the one that's been out for a little bit is Libby and Overdrive. So for those of us who are maybe reading a lot more ebooks these days, if you're not really sure how to do it, there's a great guide I've done on that. As well, one that's coming out on how to do some digital storytelling and sort of record your impressions of what's going on in the world in a fun digital way. So check that out too.
Nice. So yeah, watch for those on our YouTube channels, and we'll have a link to some of Meg's videos in our show notes today. But Meg, I'm really happy you're joining me today because as a community librarian, one of the big things in the library world, and kind of it's almost like the original library marketing campaign, if you will. That's the summer reading club. And so that's what we're going to be talking all about today, because it's June. Of course, rite of passage for all kids with libraries over the summer is, of course, joining the summer reading club. And we have a special guest joining us today to chat all about that. And that is librarian Karen Doerksen. Karen, welcome to Overdue Finds. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing really good. Thanks.
So for those listening, can you let everyone know which branch you work out of and kind of what your role is like here at EPL?
Well, I work out of the Lowest Hole branch normally. I'm one of the associate managers there. And I'm also the chair of the Summer Reading Club team. And so right now, while the libraries have been closed, I've been stationed at the Millwoods branch and kind of the mastermind behind all of the different things going on with Summer Reading Club and getting that ready to go, and working with our team and with all the different departments that are involved in that to make sure that we can pull that off this summer.
Yeah, I know there's quite a bit of work going on behind the scenes for not only the kids Summer Reading Club, which you obviously oversee, but we're also going to touch on the Summer Reading Club for adults as well. So there's lots of fun stuff that is going on behind the scenes right now at EPL, and trying to get this all ready for what will be a different summer for how these summer reading clubs are going to look. So we're going to be chatting about that on today's show. Before we get started, though, I actually want to give a shout out to a listener by the name of Mark Bisson. Hopefully I said your name right. We, of course, at the end of every episode, we always ask our listeners, if you have a suggestion for the show or any feedback, to send us a note at podcast@EPL. And Meg, we recently got one about our March Madness tournament.
So exciting. I love hearing from listeners.
Yeah, no, I love getting those emails as well. And so basically he had a suggestion for next year's theme for it. He recommended actually the tournament be on cult titles. So think of, as he said in his email, perfect example is Rocky Horror Picture Show, maybe the music from the Grateful Dead, and TV series like Twin Peaks. So I actually thought that was a great idea. What do you think of that one?
I really love it. I think there's lots of things now that we have so much streaming available that maybe aren't popular when they first happen and then get rediscovered sort of even 20, 30 years later. And I think it's such a great idea to kind of look back and see some of those great titles from the past that maybe got overlooked, just like our overdue finds.
That's right. That really would be the technical overdue finds tournament. So yeah, I thought it was a great idea, and it kind of gets added to our list of, we have a few other ideas as well, and we'll start working on that in early 2021, of course. But yeah, so Mark, thank you so much for the awesome suggestion. And as I mentioned before, if you have any suggestions for the show, or you just want to reach out to us, give us feedback, you can email myself, Caroline, Meg at podcast@epl.ca. So let's get into it today with our overdue finds picks. Karen, it's your first time on the show. What have you been reading or watching or maybe listening to lately?
Oh, geez, I have to go first. I've been working my way through Chris McGeorge's Guess Who book, which is, I looked it up actually to figure out what type of book it is. It's kind of a subgenre of the murder mystery books, and it's considered a high concept book where the premise is what you're in it for. It's almost like a video game idea that's been fleshed out into a book. So you've got a detective who wakes up in a locked room with 5 suspects, and he has 3 hours to solve the murder, otherwise the hotel will blow up. Very, very intense, and it's almost like the character development and the plot development is an afterthought. You're really in it for that premise, for that puzzle at the center of the book. And I've been noticing a few books coming out that are a little bit more like that. 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and some of the newer Anthony Horowitz books are similar.
So this is a series then?
Nope, this one is a standalone book. But you know how some murder mysteries, we've seen them, they've been adapted into computer games, and this one almost feels like it's a computer game that's been fleshed out into a book. It's the puzzle, it's the premise that you're in it for, not so much the book itself.
Nice.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I know people who read murder mysteries, often there's some who read for that puzzle aspect, who just want to be able to like figure out the clues and see if they can beat the detective to the answer, right? So that's a big draw to murder mysteries, I think.
Yeah, and this one, it's very clearly, like, it's almost like the parameters of the game have been established at the beginning of the story by this ominous narrator with a horse's head. I don't know. It's a little odd. But yeah, you have the rules set out, and the detective has to operate within them in order to solve the mystery. So it's kind of an interesting structure.
It sounds really fun anyway. It sounds like a perfect summer read.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right, Meg, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately?
I actually just read Heroine Complex by Sarah Kuhn, and it's set in San Francisco, where they've got a bit of a demon problem, and but they're lucky to have sort of a homegrown super heroine, Avita Jupiter, who used to be plain old Annie Chang. And so it's just a really great kind of different take on a superhero story, where it's actually about these 2 female best friends and kind of what they do when the hero gets injured and her sidekick assistant has to kind of take over for her so that the city isn't unprotected. And it's got some really great, because it's in San Francisco, there's some really great sort of Asian characters and representation, and the 2 main characters sort of bond over the fact that they're the weird kids who eat Asian food at lunch, and all the other kids kind of think that's a little gross. And then as they grow up, everybody's eating that Asian food because suddenly it's cool. And so it's just kind of a really interesting take on superheroes, and it's not a comic book or anything, it's an actual novel, and not even for young adults, which I think sometimes we think superheroes are just for kids, and this one is definitely more of a kind of adult superhero story.
So is it set in present day San Francisco, or is it in the past?
Yeah, no, it's set in present day. It's sort of 10 years ago. The demons started appearing in San Francisco when these two characters were teenagers, and they and some other San Francisco people just got superpowers, and they're sort of figuring out how to live with it. Some of them are really dumb superpowers, which I think is also kind of fun. Like one is a human GPS. She can just like find people where they last drove a car or something, and she's like, yeah, it's a great power for Uber. Like, I mean, does it really help you to fight demons? So it's kind of fun that way.
I love the idea of the sidekick maybe needing to step in and kind of like the Batman Robin situation. Batman's down, so Robin's got to try and win this one.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a fun take.
Nice.
What about you, Bryce? What are you doing?
I've been watching a lot of, just like everybody else, a lot of TV, probably way more than I should be right now. Definitely should be reading more. But my pick this week, I was going through Hoopla the other day, and I've talked about this on the show before, how I'm a fan of really bad movies, and I came across almost like one of the most kind of critically is it critically revered? No, that's not right. The most like
critically panned,
yes,
dumped on.
Yeah, pretty much. One of the most critically panned movies probably of the last 30, 40 years. And that is Cool as Ice, the Vanilla Ice movie. It came out in 1991. Now, here's the best part. You're probably like, why are you recommending that I watch Cool as Ice? I'm recommending it because this is actually the Riff Tracks version. So what that is think, actually, the guys who are doing this were kind of the creators of Mystery Science Theater 3000, which a lot of people have probably recently discovered on Netflix. So what it is it's this movie's on Hoopla, so you watch it. When the movie's playing, you can hear the movie, but over top of the movie is basically this commentary track by these hilarious writers and comedians. So they're watching the movie at the same time as you. And while you watch this and you think this is ridiculous and kind of funny, they basically point out the obvious. They kind of make fun of, well, they do make fun of it as they watch the movie. So there's lots of funny things for them to make fun of in this movie. Obviously, you have a very early 90s movie starring Vanilla Ice. So that means there's lots of like close-up shots of him just thinking about his girl, just endless scenes of him riding his motorcycle, trying to look cool. Yeah, if you're, a fan of just very early 90s cheese, this is a fantastic movie to maybe throw on maybe a Friday or Saturday night and just sit back. You don't have to think at all. You will have a great time watching this movie.
Yeah, I think that's half the fun of watching bad movies is like watching with friends or somebody who can like really make fun of it. So it's sort of nice when that's even built into the experience for you.
Exactly. In these days of social distancing, when you can't really have friends over to maybe watch a movie, this is a perfect alternative. Grab yourself a drink and settle in for the night and let these guys totally riff on Cool as Ice for you. All right. So as we talked about at the top of the show, we, of course, today are talking all about summer reading clubs. And I imagine, I know I definitely did. I've talked about it on the show in the past. Imagine Meg and Karen, you both probably participated in summer reading clubs when you were kids as well. So Karen, I guess let our listeners know a little bit about our program this year for kids. Of course, it's called Summer Starts at EPL, and maybe let our listeners know how it's going to work.
Absolutely. So for those who participated in the past, they might remember that, the kids would do their reading. Throughout the summer, they'd bring in their tracking sheet. And when they complete their 6 hours of reading, then they would normally get to enter into a contest for the grand prize. And then there would be all kinds of different activities that would surround that tracking program. So there would be performers and events and Find the Mascot contest. And this year we are going completely online with the entire program. So kids will still be tracking their reading, but they'll be submitting their minutes online, and they'll get one chance per week to enter the grand prize contest. We're still going to be doing the Find the Mascot contest, and this year our Summer Starts mascot is Turtle Swift, little turtle. And Turtle she's going to be hiding around Edmonton. So we're going to be providing clues on the website every week, and participants will have a chance to enter their guess for where Turtle Swift is hiding. And there will be prizes for that as well. Anybody who will do a draw out of the entrance and be awarding book prizes for those. We're also going to be doing a summer story project with EPL's feature writer, Allison Hughes. She's going to be starting us off with the first sentence of a story. And we're going to be asking participants every week to enter their suggestion for the next line in the story. And so we're hoping by the end of the summer, we will have a full story that's entirely written by SRC participants.
That sounds like so much fun. I know I've done that with friends on a piece of paper, but this is like the 2020 version.
Absolutely. And we asked Allison to come up with the first line of the story, and we were all kind of thinking maybe just like once upon a time in a library, and she gave us a few options and she just blew us away. I mean, she's clearly an experienced author compared to us. The first line is amazing. I'm just on tenterhooks. I want to know what happens next in the story.
That's going to be really interesting to read afterwards because I don't know. I think of myself as a kid. I'm definitely throwing in some bathroom humor in my submissions anyway.
Oh, and there might be, yeah, absolutely. We're going to have a live Q&A session with Allison in July. So if kids have questions about the contest or about writing a good story, or even just about life as an author and what that's like, then they can join her to ask those questions. And we will that will be one of many live events. We will have some events done by performers, and we will also have some staff doing live events. We're going to have story times and magic shows and sing-alongs and science projects. We'll be doing some recorded content that will be available on the website. So every week, kids can come and check back on the website. There will be quizzes and book lists and blogs and all kinds of different activities for them to participate in, and videos to watch, and all sorts of stuff going on.
I was going to say, I'm really looking forward to doing the one that I get to do. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun content.
Yeah.
Oh, I get to do the teddy bear's picnic. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
The one interesting advantage to being online is that we have a little bit more flexibility to add ideas as we go. We're not so limited by having to create print materials, because that really affected our timelines in the past. We had to kind of figure out what we were doing and then stick to it. And now, as new ideas are kind of coming up, we can adjust and add them, and oh, that's a great idea, let's do that too. So there is a hidden advantage to this whole closure thing. We are definitely seeing a silver lining to it.
Yeah, and saving a lot of trees this year too, with not having to print as much stuff. So this is going to be really interesting anyway, because moving forward, we think it's going to be a popular program, but it'll be interesting to see kind of, will this then be also the trend for it, kind of moving forward, maybe into the summer of 2021 as well, and kind of going more the digital platform with it versus kind of the more old school paper programs that we've produced in the past.
I know that for the kids program, the tactile element is really a big deal, and they like coloring in the coloring sheet, and but I have heard from staff who are now doing the online events and just seeing huge interest in things that normally were not really that popular. And we're kind of asking ourselves, why didn't we do this before? And so even for the Summer Reading Club, there are a few things that we're going to be adding to the website that have been kind of like light bulb moments and going, yeah, we absolutely should have been doing this 10 years ago. So there might be elements of the online platform that continue on, definitely.
So one of the things that you touched on earlier, and it's one of my favorite things that is part of Summer Reads at EPL, is the Find the Mascot contest. And each year, the name for the mascot keeps getting better and better. So I was actually the marketing rep for, I think it was the first year that really we put kind of this fun name on the mascot. So I think the first one that we did was Russell the Crow. And we always kind of like to make it so, like, obviously the kids have no idea, but then the parents, when they come in, they think it's kind of funny. And I think we did Michael and Jay Fox the following year. And then didn't we have one based on The Rock last year?
Last year was Dwayne The Rock. All the kids thought he was a potato. We spent the whole summer trying to convince them he was a rock. And this year we actually did something a little bit different. We crowdsourced the name for the mascot. So we got all of the staff to submit their ideas, and we had some really good ones. But we settled on Turtle Swift. We really liked the little bit of irony in the name. She's a turtle, but also Swift.
No, I thought that was such a great idea. I know I saw some of the suggestions and everything, and I always love participating in that. I don't even think I submitted anything this year, because whatever you guys came up with, I thought was really good. So I'm like, oh, leave this to the professionals to.
If you want a pun, you always go to the librarians. We always have a lot of terrible puns.
Yeah.
So it must take a lot of work to plan for something like Summer Reading Club. What's the planning process like? When do you start planning?
Oh, we start planning as soon as 1 year ends. So when the Summer Reading Club ends at the end of August, we do a bit of reporting on it in September, and we get going right away for the next year. So we typically would have about 9 to 10 months to plan it, and we'd have a full team working on it. And this year we had it like pretty much ready to go in around March. We were really, really early this year, actually, because of the Milner reopening. And so we were trying to make sure that we weren't relying on departments, because we knew they would be busy. And nicely got it planned. And we had a meeting in March, and we said, maybe we need to think about this pandemic. And we went, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll just put a tracking sheet on the website. And then about 3 days later, all the branches shut down, and we sent staff home. And we had to do a complete pivot. Like we had to change everything in 3 months with half the team. So it's been a lot of work. We've had a lot of departments chipping in, and amazing support from EPL staff. Everybody's just taking on, Meg, you're one of them. You're doing one of our events for us. So people who normally wouldn't really be involved in Summer Reading Club are going to be taking on events for us. They're going to be helping out with content and figure out how to do everything online. And for a lot of us too, it hasn't just been changing the plans, but learning how to use the software that we now need to use in order to do the new format. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of fun, but a lot of work.
It's interesting what you said there, just with, it's almost like March 1st feels like it was almost like 5 years ago now, because even there was such a huge difference between March 1st and then like the 12th or 15th or whenever it was, that it was like 2 weeks later that kind of, branches shut down and everybody went home and that sort of thing. So I know even from my end too, like we were planning just actually last week, we were actually supposed to have Monica Lewinsky here in Edmonton. So all that stuff just kind of went out kind of the window within a matter of a few weeks. So, and I know that this program is huge, obviously from having worked on it in the past. So yeah, for you guys to kind of come together in such weird times and totally revamp the program is quite amazing, actually.
Yeah, and I think too that like when we were even tentatively thinking about what would this look like, if we have to close branches, I don't think anybody really had a sense of what the scope would be, like what the impact of the pandemic closures was going to be. We kind of thought that it would just mean we'd have to lower the limits on our events, and we would just continue on as usual. And we changed some of the events so that we weren't sharing crafts. And that, like, we thought that really was the extent of it, and it just blew us away when we realized what actually was going to be happening in the next few months. And then to try to plan for the summer and not know what our library service was going to look like. We went through a few iterations of the program before we finally settled on the online.
Yeah, I think that's true. Nobody's really able to predict, a few months in advance. So trying to think, okay, 3 months from now in August, what's the world going to be like when we don't know what Tuesday is going to be like is really a tough planning challenge for sure.
Kids' schedules as well kind of get messed up in this too, because traditionally, they're in the last few weeks. They should be in the last few weeks of school right now. Obviously, I know they are, but they're kind of not. Obviously, kids are at home. So it's going to be just a little bit different this year. Like I know as an adult, I totally miss kind of having the old school summer vacation where, I'm off from the end of June through the beginning of September. I know in one of my favorite parts as a kid was, once you're after that last day of school, was going to the library and participating in the summer reading club. So Karen, Meg, I know you kind of both kind of nodded your head at the beginning that you did also participate in summer reading clubs as a kid. Meg, I want to start with you. What was your experience like?
So I grew up in Ontario, so I went to the Dundas Public Library Summer Reading Club, and it was great. They used to do that old school temperature thermometer of hours read, and so you would come and submit your form, and then at the end of the week, the librarian would color up another few hours. And we had some really great prizes. I don't really know what budget they had, but we used to get a trip to Canada's Wonderland at the end of the summer if you reached the highest level of reading goal. So yeah, it was a pretty intense summer reading club. It was pretty great.
Karen, how about you?
I'm ashamed to say I didn't participate in the summer reading club. I don't remember there being one. And that I grew up in Fort McMurray. There might have been a summer reading club, but I don't remember it. I do remember going to the library. It was a really big part of the summer. I think my parents took us there because it was air conditioned. And I would take out the big stacks of books, and my mom would insist that I wasn't going to read them, and then I would read them just to prove her wrong. I think that's probably a big motivator for parents out there. You're trying to get your kids reading, a little bit of that reverse psychology.
Yeah, I definitely remember taking bike rides to the library and my mom having big saddlebags full of books on the ride back because we had taken out so many books. So yeah, those big stacks.
Yeah, I've told this story on the podcast before, but I guess for new listeners, I grew up, of course, in Medicine Hat. And so the Medicine Hat Public Library there, I remember, and actually, I believe they still do this to this day, is they have kind of like this Monopoly summer reading club board game. So I don't remember the specifics of it, but I believe it was something like if you landed on a certain square, you had to read a certain themed book or something like that. So it was fun. I really loved it as a kid. And I remember actually too, one summer, I think I took out a ton of books and I was late bringing them back. And I think I knew I was going to have to pay some late fines. And I remember talking to my mom and being come on, do I really have to pay these? She was like, oh, no, that's on you. That's your responsibility. So I don't even remember how much the late fines were. Probably, I don't know, maybe $1 or $2. But for 9-year-old me, you might as well have said $1 million because that was money then I wasn't able to spend on hockey cards and Slurpees, basically.
The important things in life.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Those are still kind of important things for, adult Bryce too.
I feel your pain. I remember library fees, and we used to have to pay to get a card replaced. Oh. And I was notorious for losing my library card. So I remember a lot of tears over that $1 service charge that I had to keep paying.
So Meg, you kind of touched on this with the prizes. I don't remember what we could have won with the Medicine Hat Public Library one as a kid, but that is one of the really cool things about the summer reading clubs is that you can win some great stuff. So Karen, walk us through, what do some of the prizes look like for the kids this year?
This year, we actually haven't got all the prizes confirmed yet because, as I said, we did have to make some changes at the last minute. The one prize that we have confirmed that we will be offering is a subscription to Kiwi, which is a maker company. It's kind of like the Loot Crate boxes that probably a lot of people are familiar with, where you can purchase a subscription depending on the age of the child, and they would get a monthly box of it's like an activity or a project, and they're all Steam based. And yeah, my kids got a subscription for Christmas. So we were trying it out, and they're very, very neat projects. They're making ukuleles and macrame hangings and all kinds of different things, ceramic plant holders, and yeah, a lot of really neat activities there. And they have them even for infants and toddlers, right up to teenagers. We are working on a couple of other grand prizes as well. So there will be more than one grand prize winner. And we will have those confirmed so that we can announce them on the launch date on June 15th. And then for the weekly contest, the Find the Mascot contest, we are, just like every other year, we'll be doing a draw, and we will be offering free books to the winners.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think this year especially those Loot Crate kind of things are really popular. It's great to have some just at-home activities, and I know a lot of parents are getting at the end of their rope of ideas of things to do, so it's nice when it just kind of comes pre-packaged. Here's all the things and the idea to do it.
When I remember as a kid, I got one year as a gift a subscription to Nintendo Power magazine. And as a kid, I loved it because, well, one, I love Nintendo, and two, it was awesome. You get this like different gift in the mail every month. You'd look forward to it. I didn't realize that they had those type of subscription services, not magazines, but this sort of thing, kind of like a Loot Crate for kids.
Absolutely. We've done subscriptions even for my teenage sons. And I mean, even as 18-year-olds, they were checking the mailbox every day to see if their crate came in. It's a really big deal to get mail.
Yeah. Mail that's not a bill. That's like something fun. What? Yeah. Obviously, like Summer Reading Club makes a big impact on all of us as kids, but is there anything for adults to do this summer?
I can fill in on that one. So yes, actually, Karen and I were actually chatting about this right before we recorded. We hit the record button today, but so over the last couple of years, we have started to introduce a summer reading club for adults. Ours is called, the adult one, I should say, is called Summer Reads. So this is actually a program that behind the scenes that I'm actually involved with here at the library. And what's really cool about it is we talked, just a couple of minutes ago about how as kids, we remember signing up for those summer reading clubs. So really ours is kind of really based on that nostalgia. We kind of have, it's like a 80s, 90s type theme. And just like the summer reading club for kids, parents can participate, and even adults like myself who don't have kids, you can also participate as well. So what you can do this summer, of course, is keep track of your reading. And we also have some fun activities planned, just like I know that the kids one does as well. So, and actually one of those activities, if you are listening to this podcast today, that is an activity. So it is listen to an episode of Overdue Finds, but we have other fun stuff too. So it's like go for a bike ride, explore the river valley, read a different genre of book you don't normally read. So maybe like a graphic novel or nonfiction or anything like that. So so obviously parents, if you're listening to this and your kids are signing up, you can also participate in a summer reading club with them as well. And just like the kids one, we also have some amazing prizes to give away for adults. We'll be doing weekly draws of gift cards to local businesses. And I don't have 100% confirmation on this yet. I'm waiting for the green light, but I will say our grand prize is pretty awesome. So I'll give that teaser.
Stay tuned for more detail. Yeah, I love those challenges that kind of get you to read something outside of your comfort zone too, because I think a lot of us as adults, you get into a groove and you read the things you like, and it's always sort of nice to stretch out and try new things.
I have to ask, obviously, what's your favorite kind of summer read? Karen, you kind of gave us a preview of a title, which I thought sounded like a perfect summer read. But what do you look for when you're kind of choosing a book for yourself to read personally?
For me, the summer is the time to read the books that are too scary to read in the winter. I read a lot of horror and a lot of thrillers in the summer. So last summer I made it through Stephen King's It for the first time. The audio version is, I think, about 45 hours. It took me most of the summer, and I listened to it on my deck because I was too scared to listen to it. And during the day.
Well, at least in Edmonton in the summer, you have lots of daylight. So
absolutely. And that book is about summer, and it's about like the classic children's summer where you're outside and riding your bikes, and that was the perfect summer read. But yeah, I read the scary books in the summer and the non-scary books in the winter.
Yeah, there totally is something frightening about it being 4 p.m. and it's pitch black. It's minus 30 outside. You're stuck inside, and then here you are reading this terrifying tale of Pennywise the clown.
Yeah, and your furnace is making scary noises.
Oh,
the
noises,
house makes really scary noises in the winter. In the summer, you're outside and there's birds chirping. Much better background.
It's interesting that you mentioned the book It. I remember when the first movie came out, I think it was maybe in 2017, maybe, or 18. Anyway, I remember so that was around the time that I first read that book as well. And I think it took me, like, I've talked about this on the show before, I'm a notoriously slow reader. I'm pretty sure I worked on that book for like the entire year leading up to that movie. It took me forever. So it doesn't surprise me at all that the audiobook version is like 45 hours long. Meg, how about you? What do you look for? Like, what interests you? If you're you're about to go on a road trip or something, remember vacations. And what do you look for?
I love books with sort of strong female protagonists, and I'm a big fantasy and science fiction reader. So there's lots of great books with kind of hardcore female leads on those. And then especially in the summer, I will definitely reread favorite books. I find that's kind of one of my favorite comfort things to do. And then you don't worry about where you are, or if you kind of put the book down and go and do something, then you're not sort of going, oh my gosh, what happened? And you know where you are. It's fine if you fall asleep midway through on the beach or in your hammock. It doesn't interrupt the flow that way. So yeah, I'm a big rereader in the summer, I find.
So I have to ask, what are some of the books that you've reread before?
I really love Wen Spencer's Tinker series. This is one where Pittsburgh has been transported to the elf world of Elf Home. And so it's just like regular people living in Pittsburgh of all cities. And now they have to live with like elves and magic, and Tinker runs a scrapyard. And so she's kind of this 18-year-old who just is really street smart and figures out how to build things out of, leftovers, because of course you can't get any parts to replace cars and things like that. And so it's just kind of this really interesting, she's just kind of one of those characters who just figures it out and makes it happen, and all sorts of crazy adventures happen to her. So I love those kinds of stories where, this person just kind of gets plopped into this situation and it's kind of crazy and things kind of go from there.
That sounds awesome. Yeah. Pittsburgh being transported to an elf type world. I'm sure the people of Pittsburgh absolutely love it. Love that being a very blue collar town.
Yeah, exactly. And what about you, Bryce?
One author that I really, really like, I like stuff that are just really dark comedies, stuff that's maybe a little bit twisted. So I've recently started to read some of the other books in author Chuck Palahniuk's collection. So, of course, he's the author of Fight Club. His books aren't for everybody, obviously, but if you're looking for something that's very dark, very twisted, yet very funny, he has great books. In each of his books, too, are like really short. They're maybe around 200 or 250 pages. one of my favorites is, of course, Fight Club's great, but also Choke, which was also one of his first books too. It's I won't go into details just in case we have younger listeners joining us today, but you can look it up and we'll have a link to it in the show notes. But I really look at something that's, like you said, very short, and just has some sense of humor to it. As
was that the same when you were a kid? Did you read those kinds of like Goosebumps books for summer reading clubs as a kid, or?
I wasn't so much into Goosebumps. I was a little too kind of old for those, like when they first really started to come out. But I was really into the Choose Your Own Adventure, and those books too were like very dark and twisted. You started out,
they are.
You're like this nerdy kid in the book and into wizard things, and all of a sudden you flip the page and basically there's like an ogre clubbing you in the head and you're totally dead. So that's some twisted stuff for a book for that's aimed at like 10-year-old boys anyway. So I really like that stuff as a kid anyway, and I would keep making the same stupid mistakes in the book and end up at the same part. So I would try and cheat too and look ahead and see what the other option would be. And yeah, they need to bring those back.
To work your way back.
Yeah,
those were great. Yeah.
Have you checked into, I think we have them in our collection actually, the Choose Your Own Adventure Shakespeare
no
books?
Oh
yeah, the Hamlet one, no matter what option you choose, you die. You just die. Every character, every option.
I'll have to check those out then, because I've been online lately and looking at maybe purchasing some older copies of Choose Your Own Adventure. So I'm surprised in this age of nostalgia that they haven't re-released some of those books yet.
There's actually a video game that's based on that too, Elsinore, and you play as Ophelia, and it's you trying to stop everybody from dying. That's like the whole video game. And you just loop back in time. So as soon as everybody dies, then you go back to the beginning of the time loop and you try to go through it again and to have everybody live. I've been playing that. I've been playing it for a while and I have not succeeded.
I've always thought it would be really fun for kids as a library event to do a Choose Your Own Adventure puppet play.
Oh yeah.
Crowd to vote on which direction to go in next. Be a little bit of extra work, but that I always thought that would be a really fun way to do that.
That would be fun. Yeah, totally. Well, they have those on Netflix right now too. So those fans of The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, there's the interactive movie that they have on there, and then there was also a Black Mirror one too that came out last in 2019 as well. So lots of stuff out there. But if any of the old publishers of Choose Your Own Adventure books are listening, there's a market for them. Just re-release them.
I used to do the Lurleen McDaniel books. Does anybody else remember those? They were terrible. They were like teenagers who were dying of, impossible diseases, falling in love with each other, and like a girl would get a heart transplant, but the only match was her boyfriend, so he had to die in a car accident for her to live. It was just like really terrible melodrama, and again, like marketed at like 12-year-old girls, and you're going, really, this is dark for a 12-year-old. But yeah, there's a
he's like, I really do need a new heart here, so
yeah, so maybe drive irresponsibly. That'll really help me out.
All right, so let's move into our roundtable questions to wrap things up here today. So, if you had unlimited funds, who would be your dream summer reading club performer? So of course, Karen mentioned at the beginning of the show, a lot of times with the summer reading club, we have performers come in and do either like puppet shows, or they'll bring in animals to the branches. So if you had unlimited funds, Karen, I'm going to start with you. Who would you bring in to EPL?
Well, this year my answer is a little bit different than it normally would be, but this year the person that I've been wishing we could bring in as a surprise guest would be Dr. Hinshaw. Just a great role model as a scientist for kids. And she's so recognizable, even kids, they know who she is. I've seen a lot of tweets about parents saying that their kids are now calling her a superhero, and she has become the face of Alberta's response to the pandemic. Everybody is just so impressed with her calm response, and I think she would just be amazing to come in and be able to talk with the kids and have a question and answer session, and they could talk to her about her career and how she's handled all of this. I think she'd be great.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
awesome. I love that the kids are considering, especially our front line workers, like those in healthcare and police and firefighters, to be those superheroes. So, if anything, there will be some positives to come out of this, and that is definitely one of them. Meg, how about you?
Well, I sort of had two picks. One is sort of the nostalgia, like what Meg would have wanted to see as a kid, which is like Raffi. I would have loved to see like one of those great children's performers, because we have some really great children's performers, especially in Canada. And then sort of adult Meg thinks like it would be great if we could get like Chris Hadfield or like an astronaut or somebody like who could again go into that science, but I think he's a really good science communicator, which is not always the same as being a great scientist. And so like Bill Nye, Chris Hadfield, somebody who could really do that kind of discussion with kids about science, I think would be really cool.
For me, you know what? This is going to sound really funny, but I think he'd be really popular with kids. I think he could do some really fun stuff around food. That would be Guy Fieri from the Food Network. Imagine him coming in like diners, drive-ins, and dives style and chatting about, I know he doesn't always promote the most healthy foods, so maybe that's not a great idea, but kids would love his wacky fire t-shirts, and I think you could have some fun, maybe even just with making kind of helping mom and dad prepare meals. So I think that would be amazing.
I think kids come up with great food combinations, so we could almost do it like a cooking show where they bring in their food combination for Guy to try. That would be awesome.
Definitely. I love it. All right. So we touched on summer vacation a little while ago. And I know this year, just with everything that's been going on, a lot of people, unfortunately, probably won't be able to go on those traditional summer vacations. So I have to ask, Meg, I'm going to start with you. What was your favorite vacation spot when you were a kid?
So as I said, I grew up in Ontario, and so there's lots of little lakes all across Ontario. And so what we used to do that I loved was we'd go spend a couple weeks up at a cottage by a lake, and we would just go swimming and have bonfires at night. And I always thought that was like the best vacation, because you were like, I mean, thinking of today with how much internet access we have, like there was no internet. Like in fact, the camp where we had the cottage on purpose didn't have internet access so that you couldn't kind of be connected. And so there's a lot of fun times just kind of running around.
Nice.
What about you?
Mine was, of course, growing up in southern Alberta. So those people who have traveled through southern Alberta, kind of right along the Alberta-Saskatchewan border, is a provincial park it's an interprovincial park. That's Cypress Hills. We went out there countless times to go camping. As a young boy, I was involved in Cub Scouts. So there was a big scout camp up there in Cypress Hills as well. That actually my grandfather helped build in the early 80s. So Cypress Hills in both Alberta and Saskatchewan have always been a favorite summer vacation spot for me. Karen, how about you?
Camping. Yeah. We used to do a lot of camping up in the Peace River area. We had relatives up there. And we did old school camping with the tent on the ground, and my grandparents had a little camper. So that was the cherry on the sundae if we got to go camping with them, because I was small enough that I could just kind of squeeze in between them.
Yeah. No glamping then.
Yeah, absolutely not. But yeah, those are my fondest memories. It always felt like we were on a bit of an adventure. We were all kind of having to work together to get the food ready and do the dishes, and it was a big project.
One of the other things too that I loved about camping was there would of course be all these other families there. You'd always make friends with some random kid, and you'd be like best friends for 4 or 5 days, and they would go on to their different city, and you would go on, and you would never see them ever again. It was a blast.
Yeah. It was the same. I went to summer camps and you would like meet these kids for a week and then you'd become pen pals. You'd like never see them again.
Oh, yeah.
But you're like, we're best friends forever.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it was 1 week and that was it. Never heard from them ever
exactly.
again.
Never. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Karen. Where can everyone go to find out more about Summer Starts at EPL?
Well, we're working on the website right now, so people can keep checking. It's www.epl.ca/summer starts. That is where they will be going once it is live, and we will probably have a placeholder in place there for people to look at.
So yeah, I was on there the other day and there is a placeholder on that site right now. So definitely bookmark it and go back, and there will be more information available on that page shortly. And then as for the adult summer reading club, you can go to epl.ca/summer-reads. And we'll have all the details on there about, we'll also have some online programs that we're working on. One of them, Meg, is a online trivia event through Zoom. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
So exciting. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you haven't yet, we encourage you to hit the subscribe button so you automatically get new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And even more importantly, please tell a friend about the show.
Yeah. And don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about today in our show notes. And of course, as we touched on at the beginning of the episode, we'd love to hear from our listeners. So you can reach us on Facebook and on Twitter at epl.ca, or please send us an email at podcast@epl.ca. Maybe you can send us your summer reading suggestions and we'll read those on our next episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.